Does Kyle Shanahan panic in big games? Give me your thought on that.
It's an interesting thought, right? Because a lot of times he'll talk about, well, we got to see if the lights are too bright for certain players. Like he's played well with Jordan Mason. He's talked about that a lot. Like, yeah, he was great in preseason, but regular season's a whole different beast. And that is a good point. Sometimes you can see, like De'Aaron Fox. I felt that game 7, he just wasn't. It was too much. Steph Curry had the 50 points. De'Aaron Fox just stopped shooting. The moment was too big. I feel like we've seen a little bit of that from Kyle in his career, where he'll be on like the hottest of hot streaks. And then all of a sudden in the last game of the year, he does something that's so out of character. Like 2019, he's on this crazy streak with Mostert running, and you can't stop him. And it's like he has this master class in the NFC Championship game against the Packers where he runs for all these years. It's just one of the most amazing play calling displays ever. What Kyle Shanahan did to the Packers.
229 yards.
It's just amazing. 8 passes in modern football to win that way. It's like it should have been one of his biggest. It should have been a legendary prelude to his Super Bowl victory, to his coronation as a real genius. But what did he do? He stopped running in the second half with a lead and put the game in Jimmy's hands. It's like he cracked. And then this year, this is why I think about it. George Kittle was talking a lot recently about how smart Kyle is and how he sets up big plays. And the example was, he called a bunch of bad plays against Seattle in the playoffs. They were down 17-16 at halftime.
Runs that go for a yard, something like that, but it sets up play action in a future play call.
Correct. Because he's so patient. He's so confident. He's such a genius. So thinking 8 plays ahead sets up these plays to give him a better chance to succeed. You're supposed to do that. I mean, that's what Bill Walsh did. But then what happened against Philly? Okay, let's go slow. They win the coin toss. They defer because that's what they always do. But Philly's the fastest starting team in the league.
Right.
So the Niners are banking that their number one defense is going to get a stop. They almost do. But Kyle is in his head or something and doesn't challenge that 4th down throw. So Philly scores a touchdown. The Niners are down 7-0, okay? They're moving the ball on their first drive. Moving it. They're 2nd and 6 at the 50. This is where Kyle Shanahan, the genius, the patient coach who sets things up, calls a freaking run. Calls a run. Plays the long game. What does he do? He calls a shot play on the 6th play of the game before setting it up. And the defensive line doesn't react to the play fake. It's a disaster. The quarterback gets hurt. To me, that's him being out of character. The Kyle we know would never do that. He didn't do that 2 weeks ago. He respected Dallas, but he fell down 7-0 to Philly after missing that challenge, and I think he panicked. I I can't believe that call was in the original script. I think he panicked.
To me, I don't think he panics. I think panic might be the wrong word.
That's a strong word. It's a strong word.
I don't think he panics. I don't think in that Philly game he saw it for what it was. I think that Philly got 70 sacks this year. Why did they get 70 sacks? They got 70 sacks because
They're winning.
Well, they were winning all the time. They also
winning.
had incredible rushers inside and outside.
Yeah.
But they stopped even playing the run on the play action game. So if you're a play action team,
you're screwed.
You're basically, and they're not going to honor the fake at all, regardless of game situation. You're really giving them an extra chance, extra second.
You're slowing yourself down.
You're slowing yourself down. So I think he should have gone away from the play action, but he's comfortable with the play action, and that's a big tenet of his offense. And he went to it, and they sacked the quarterback. And we can all say it was Croft and this and that, but that's all Monday morning.
They could have ran the ball. It was 2nd and 6 at midfield. Slow down. What's the big deal?
It was that play action was not really going to work against this Philly team. And it didn't. I mean, and you saw it right there with Hassan Reddick just burning right by the edge. He didn't.
But when Kittle was talking about how he sets plays up, weren't you thinking like, hey, what about Philly though, man? What happened in Philly? You didn't set that up.
Well, I just think it's an inability in that game to recognize. To me, if there's an issue with Kyle, it is risk reward. And at time, like, for example, I went and watched the All-22 again on the Dallas game and the Philly game. I thought in the first half of the Dallas game, you can sit there and talk about Dallas did this, Dallas did that. I thought the play calling was very conservative in the Dallas game. It was like, we know Dallas has got a rush, so we're going to be real conservative, and we're not going to lose the game because they're a big play team with an outstanding rush. We're going to be real conservative. I thought they were too conservative in the Dallas game when they didn't need to be. And then I think they got way, I mean, if you compare that, and this is with Brock Purdy, then go the next week at the end of the first half, it's 7-7. They don't have to, or was it 14-7? It was 14-7, I think, right? Towards the end of the first half.
17-16 with Seattle.
No, I'm talking about the Philly game.
The Philly game. I forget. Yeah, you're right. It was close. It was close.
It was close. And instead of just running the ball, going into the locker room and shortening the game, that's to me, the conservative approach should have been in Philly after Purdy went down. Instead, he gets super aggressive with Josh Johnson.
Why?
At the end of the first half and gives up a score, and it just, has a
But
huge
if you're making
turnover.
erratic decisions in the biggest game of the season consistently, like what does that say about you?
I think
I'm not saying you're panicking.
Well,
they
don't trail a lot. His game works way better from ahead, but I think he gets a little impatient when they're trailing. And then I'll say this. I also think that impatient. I think we've seen it in multiple examples of it. Well, I'll give you an example, the Atlanta game. The Atlanta game where they were getting the ball, Atlanta was dominating the time of possession. I thought the Niners got a little too aggressive and impatient in that game. I think sometimes Kyle gets too impatient when they fall behind and he wants to start turning it in. He'll go away from the run game altogether. And then other times, to me, he's too conservative. And one area where he's way, way too conservative, and I think the league is showing this is where the trend is going, in short yardage. You've got all these weapons.
Go for it.
You've got.
Why are you kicking field goals? Why are you punting?
And don't punt. I don't want to. Go for it on anything under 4th and 5 when you're outside your 40-yard line. He gets very, very conservative at times.
How many times did he punt from Rams territory in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago? How many times?
And what are you picking up? You're giving up a chance to go for it for 20 yards of field position in a sport where it's all big plays anyway. To me, go for it more. If you learn anything from Philly, from Baltimore, and the success they've had on going for it on 4th down, is that when you're outside your own 30, all the rest of the field, you got 70 yards to play with there. You get to 4th and under 5, go for it. Go for it. And if you don't get it, let your defense play defense.
The way I remember the game against Dallas in the playoffs was that Kyle got in his head and he was trying to trick Dan Quinn because Dan Quinn knows him so well. In the first half, their run game didn't work, but the runs they were calling were all these like tricky runs they hadn't put on film yet because I think he thought he'd been scouted by Quinn. And what happened, I'm sitting next to Patrick Willis. He turns to me in the second quarter and he says, he didn't know my name, but he says, why are they not imposing their will on Dallas with the run game? And then apparently around the same time, Christian McCaffrey and Juszczyk go up to Kyle and say, dude, we need to stop the cute stuff. Let's just take it to him. You don't need to run 8 million motions every play. You don't have to trick teams. When you have these running backs with Trent Williams, you should be able to line up and run at these teams. Like these teams aren't built to stop the run. And I feel like Kyle sometimes overthinks it. Man, you have the talent. Just line up and run. Line up and run at Philly the whole week. When people said the Niners are going to beat Philly, what was the reasoning? Well, Philly can't stop the run. This will be simple for the Niners. They can just physically take it to Philly, and that's the game. But Kyle didn't do that.
No,
he didn't make that. He wanted to make it a play action game. He made it a play action game.
The game was over after Purdy went out. I mean, was it not? It was. I mean, in my mind,
I compare that to a boxer coming out. Bell rings. Boxer comes out. Hands are down. Why? I don't know. Gets knocked out. And then he's just like, well, I wasn't ready. Like, well, damn, the bell rang. Like, what were you doing, dude? That was a real
and it's like
lazy play.
Just because you like to settle into the game a little bit doesn't mean that you don't need to challenge on the first series. Maybe the biggest play of the game is the first series. In this case, it was. I don't know. I don't want to throw too much blame on Shanahan for that because, to be honest, I didn't feel like me sitting on the couch got a good view of the replay until after the timeout, after the TV timeout. And I don't know what the guys in the booth saw and what they didn't see. Obviously, you had a Fonga going incomplete. That was hint number one. Hint number two was Hurts sprinting down the field to get the snap off. Just on that alone, I would have challenged. I do understand why he was protective of his challenge, but think about risk reward. If you don't challenge there, they're set up for a score. if you do challenge there and they deked you with the run down there, you've wasted your challenge. But that's not a disaster. It's not a disaster to waste your challenge. It is a disaster to have them set up on the doorstep in the biggest game of the year.
You have Christian McCaffrey. You traded for him. Ever since you got him, he's been your MVP and you've been scoring 35 points a game. You can't let Tyler Kroft decide the game. You can't let Brock Purdy decide the game. It's all about McCaffrey now until the wheels fall off. When Mike had Terrell Davis, he was smart enough to know that he was gonna be damned if he was gonna lose a game without Terrell Davis having his say about it. I mean, they gave Terrell Davis the ball over and over and over and over and over again. And I just don't understand why that wasn't the game plan against Philly. Like, that was your best foot forward. McCaffrey's going to win this game for you. And no, you're like, nah, we're going to trick him on the first. They're expecting that. So we're going to go to Ayuk down the field and hope that Tyler Kroft, like, nah, man, come on. Get out of the way and let McCaffrey get you your first ring.
There's a little
Terrell Davis got your dad 2 rings. McCaffrey could get you 2 rings if you freaking let him. Mostert could have got you a ring if you freaking let him. Let him. Yeah. Get out of the way. Get out of the way.
My comparison in there would be the Super Bowl against Kansas City. Debo at halftime was on pace to be the MVP of the game. He got 2 touches in the second half. 2 touches. He was unstoppable in the first half.
It shouldn't be so hard.
And
you have really great players. Let them do it.
I asked him about it. He's like, well, it's not really the way it's done. And I get it. But you know what? You have to.
What does that mean?
Well, he's saying,
the defense dictates who gets the ball. The defense dictates who gets the ball. No. You do, Kyle. You're a genius.
He's basically saying the defense can take away certain things. And I understand what he's saying. But at the end of the day, 2 touches in a half of football for your guy. No, let's be honest about this. They had a chance to beat the Rams a couple of years ago in the NFC Championship game. It came down to the final drive. Who touched the ball? Cooper freaking Kupp.
Over and over.
You telling me you didn't want to take him away? You did.
Who didn't touch the ball in the Niners?
In the second half of the Super Bowl, Debo.
No. The last 10 minutes of the game.
Well, the last 13 minutes of the game.
Yeah, Debo.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That to me was definitely a bad situation. All right.
So you want to say it's not choking, it's not panicking. I don't know what the word is, but it's definitely he does some uncharacteristic stuff when the pressure's on.
I think that there's times he gets too conservative. There's times he's too tied to his script. There's times he doesn't realize that, it's like, it's about the play. The game's about the players. So if you don't have the tight end to block Hassan Reddick, then don't put Kroft in that position. If you have a player like Debo Samuel that's really special, then make sure you figure out a way to get him the ball.
Isn't that like football 101? You don't have to be a freaking genius to figure that out. Like, that's.
But I mean, and then you can blame guys afterwards. I mean, now here comes Latou and here comes Braden Willis. Now you got better blockers at tight end. Kroft is off the roster. Dwelly's probably going to get cut. But you know what? The game's over.
Can you imagine Andy Reid losing a Super Bowl and being like, "Yeah, I just couldn't get the ball to Travis Kelce. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. They took him away, and I had no idea how to beat him. So we lost."
Your best guys. You have to figure out a way to get your best guys the ball.
You have to. That's your job. They pay you $10 million a year at least.